one of the very best tips you can possibly have in your arsenal, in your little minds for Grand Arena. And I'm not talking about paywall gear 13. I'm not talking about amazing 6-stat mods. Not talking about Darth Revan or Darth Malik. What I'm talking about today, ladies and gentlemen, is your girl, Enfys Nest. Oh man, you know what? This is a video that just has to be made because I say this so many times throughout various Grand Arena streams and here and there in other parts of the world. But a few weeks ago, I finally just came to the conclusion that a high tenacity nest is one of the best things you can possibly have, especially for Grand Arena and a variety of other things such as Territory Wars, because she can solo so many teams by herself. And really the best way to monitor, we're going to go over a variety of things, what she can beat by herself and all that fun stuff. But really what it comes down to is super high tenacity. 151% is what I have my nest at, and there's some people that can get it even higher. And I mainly was kind of inspired to finally make this video, even though I've said this so many times and done it on so many Grand Arena live streams, because the other day an amazing individual on Reddit made a nice little infographic that I kind of wanted to expand upon, because they did highlight some of the great things that is Clash the Corrupted made this graphic, and there are so many more teams even beyond this list that Nest can beat by herself or with a little bit of help, as we're going to talk about today. So what I want to talk about today is just explain how broken this character is and how it's kind of stupid, really, that this character can time out a lot of teams or take out so many teams all by herself. And really, there are 3 layers to an Enfys Nest team, as this graphic kind of shows, and I've shown it many times in various videos. But Nest is kind of the level 1 team for herself, and then you have Kira and Nest, and you don't even need a maxed out Kira to make it work. And then you have the Kira, Nest, and Hermit Yoda lineup as well. And we're going to talk about each and every one of those, because each of these various teams right here can take out so many things that just boggles my mind. So let's start off with the level 1 team and explain what Enfys Nest can do. First of all, as you notice, there's no leader ability for Enfys Nest. It's pretty much just pure damage, and really the thing that just drives her crazy. I mean, every single one of these abilities are so good, but Fighting Instinct, I don't even have the Zeta on this character, and I've gotten so much use out of Enfys Nest. Just check out a lot of my Grand Arena live streams. You'll see what you can do with this character. But obviously, the Zeta I regret not having is very good, because one, she ignores taunts, so she can keep going around people doing big damage, and she gets a ton of health steal as well. And furthermore, in this unique ability, which you don't need the Zeta for, she can constantly increase her critical chance, making sure she has a chance to get a critical damage hit out and doing big damage as well. And then the other thing that's really important is that whenever an enemy loses a buff or debuff, Nest is going to get plus 2% critical damage stacking until the end of the counter. So this is one thing you're going to notice. We're going to go up against a lot of teams that are buff heavy. They're going to keep gaining buffs, they're going to keep getting debuffs or whatnot, and this is just going to jack up Enfys Nest's damage. So at this level 1 stage, Nest can do so much by herself, even without the Kira leadership and Hermit Yoda. So at this level 1 stage with Nest by herself, one thing she could take out by herself is a Rogue One team. Some people have Rogue One teams lying around, not the most popular team around, but there are a couple things you want to be careful of. Mainly, Cassian can spam out a lot of debuffs, and you want to be careful of things like stuns as well as the daze. The daze is probably the most critical thing you want to avoid on a Rogue One team, and just in general, because you want her to keep counterattacking. When she keeps counterattacking, that's where most of your damage is coming from, because her counterattacking is what breaks a lot of these teams apart. But Nest by herself can take out basically a whole entire Ewok team, which is kind of funny. And this is one of the best teams Nest is great up against by herself, is because Ewoks, they gain so many buffs and they take so many turns. Nest is not going to take many turns, but she's going to counterattack a lot because they're so quick. They take so many extra turns, and as well, all those buffs, especially coming from Logray and whatever the case may be, when those buffs are disappearing, they are juicing up Nest's critical damage by plus 2%. And as you know, she gets a bunch of critical chance, which is stacking. So when she's counterattacking, she's hitting harder, and over time, eventually her massive special abilities are going to blow away these Ewoks one by one. But the main thing you want to be very careful of is mainly Logray, as well as his daze. And really, I mean, this is one thing you want to keep in mind if you're predicting someone's going to bring in a Nest up against your team. If you're one of those teams in this endangered list that we're talking about today, the best way to counter Nest is to jack up the potency on those key debuff characters as much as possible. Mainly Logray, you want to make sure you get his potency up as high as possible, so even if there's a high tenacity Nest, there might be a slight chance you can try to apply a daze. But even if an occasional daze flies on Nest, Nest usually always comes out with the win up against the Ewoks. So Ewoks are a no-brainer. Bring in Nest, get the most banners by just placing her by herself, and sometimes you'll leave with full banners for health and protection and the empty slots as well. Another team that we're able to go up against, I showed this a while ago when the clones got their Shock T to go with them. Nest can take a clone team, all by herself. Kind of sad how that kind of pans out, but again, it really comes down to too many attacks coming out from the clones, and Nest hits them hard. Clones get a lot of buffs, and buffs translate into a lot of extra damage output for Enfys Nest, but you got to be careful because there are some things that they can do, such as when Nest finally drops her bonus protection when she takes a turn, there might be a good chance that the clone sergeant can get a big hit on Enfys Nest and drop the beast, but that really hasn't happened, but it got close a few times where clone sergeant tries to put down Nest into the grave, but by and large, no matter how many times I ran this test, Enfys Nest, for the most part, can wipe out a clone team. And keep in mind, Nest has AoE days. AoE days shuts down a lot of the retribution and the attacks out of turn that the clones are promoted through Shock Teams. Another thing I want to add on here is that Nest could potentially take out a full Imperial Trooper team all by herself. And again, it comes down to if you can try to make sure she does not get dazed by Death Trooper. There's a few battles that I recorded where once in a while, Death Trooper will land a daze on Nest and sometimes a stun even. And again, you want to try to juice up Death Trooper's potency as high as possible to make sure those dazes and stuns land. But in the case that Death Trooper just can't land a daze, your tenacity is just way too high, you can take out a full Imperial Trooper team all by Enfys Nest. But worst case scenario, if you want to play it safe, this is kind of a nice segue into the next level of a Nest team. Bring in Kira as the lead. She doesn't need to be maxed out at all, and Kira with Nest is 100% guaranteed always to take out an Imperial Trooper team all by herself. I mean, Kira doesn't do much. So speaking of Kira, let's take a little break to kind of explain what Kira is here for. Really, the only thing she is needed for, the only thing she is needed for is really just her leader ability. I have her at gear 6, and you guys see me so many times in Grand already. Just throw Kira in because all you need her for is for the leader ability. Nest, because she's an attacker, every single time she's scoring a critical hit, besides the 10% protection regeneration, she's also going to get 5% offense. So at max, this is going to stack up to plus 15% offense, which means her counterattacks are going to be more deadly, her AoE is going to be more deadly, and her special ability to just poke someone in the eye is going to be more deadly as well. So that's why Kira is going to be here. And the Zeta helps out a bit more. Instead of having just 15% max offense, you're going to get potentially plus 30% offense because the Zeta doubles all role-based stacking bonuses. Now Phoenix could potentially be beaten by Nest by herself. However, if there is going to be Sabine Wren and her armor shred and whatnot, I recommend let's bump this up to a Kira and Nest lineup because I found myself losing to a Phoenix team that had Sabine. But if there's no Sabine, and let's say instead there's Chopper, you can definitely take out a Phoenix team with just Nest by herself. But I'm going to kind of give you the safe advice and say Kira and Nest is going to be a safe way of taking out a Phoenix team, which a lot of people have built up because of Thrawn and because they are a decent team in the game. But things to be careful of, mainly, is going to be the days from Zeb, which is why you want to make sure your tenacity is high as possible, because as long as you're not getting dazed, you're going to keep counterattacking and hitting them hard. And even if there is going to be a Sabine run on the team with Kira, Ness is going to make sure she's going to keep topping off her protection, so she's going to last in battle as long as possible. And the extra damage output is going to help you a bit more because Phoenix has a lot of health and protection regeneration, and they might regain everything back, but with that extra offense from Kira, it's a better likelihood that you're going to be able to knock out these Phoenix characters one by one. And if there is Sabine, try to take out Sabine first so she doesn't keep stacking up the armor shreds, because there's a good chance Ezra can get a perfectly timed hit on an armor shredded Nest and wipe her out, assuming that she has no bonus protection on herself. The next team that Kira and Nest can take out fairly easily, this is actually kind of just really disgusting. They can take out a Jedi Bastila team with Jolie. The footage I'm going to show you, I was just like face palming the whole entire time. Jolie revived the Jedi probably like 4 or 5 times, and Nest just kept taking out these Jedi one by one. They had, it's disgusting how Nest can take out a full Bastila team. But of course, there are some things you got to be careful of when you're bringing Nest up against the Bastila Shan team, because there's a couple of big debuffs that they have. And again, this is why you want high tenacity. Bastila Shan, she has ability block in her basic and stuns. You don't want any of those, because those are going to prevent her from using her special abilities, and if she gets stunned, that's not good, because you never want her to waste a turn and not get an attack out. Another thing is, if there's going to be Jedi Knight Anakin on a Bastila Shan LeSean team, you might want to bump this up to a Hermit Yoda team, which is what we're going to talk about at the very end, because Jedi Knight Anakin makes things a lot more difficult because he has he basically has healing immunity, which prevents Nest from healing herself up when she gets kind of low on the health side. Kira Nest should be able to handle a Bast LeSean team, and if you want to be really safe, throw in Hermit Yoda, and you're basically guaranteed to take out a Bast LeSean Jedi team. Even if there's Jolie Bindo, it's not a problem. Nest will take care of everything. They get so many buffs on the other side of the field with the Bastila team that it just jacks up Kira's damage, and over time, if the battle lasts, the longer the battle lasts, the more damage that Nest is going to get because of all the buffs that are happening on the other team. And now the last tier that we want to talk about. If you're going up against a much more difficult team, this is when you want to bust out Hermit Yoda. Again, I mean, this shouldn't be too much of a surprise if you watch my Grand Arena live streams for the past several months now. Hermit Yoda, the thing that he's adding to his lineup is basically one thing only. You don't need to have him geared up all the way, but it's recommended. He's a good character overall, but the thing you really, really need the most is Master's Training. Master's Training takes Nest to a whole other level, basically turns her into a Super Saiyan, and basically it's because he gives off this Master's Training buff, which can't be dispelled, which is huge. With Master's Training, Nest is going to get plus 25% accuracy, plus 25% defense, offense, potency, and what about this? Tenacity. One of the most recent teams out here, Padme Amidala with the Galactic Republic crew. There's going to be a caveat to this, but Enfys Nest with this trio right here with Kira and Hermit Yoda can take out a Padme Amidala team. It's, again, kind of disgusting. It takes a while because of how Padme's team is pretty durable, but over time, Nest is going to chip away at them. Padme Amidala gets a lot of buffs on her team, which means extra offense or critical damage for Enfys Nest, and over time, you just chew away at the team. But the thing to look out for, I mean, Padme can stun, and the stun is uncleansable. That's a big, scary thing right there. Anakin, he has healing immunity. We talked about this before in the Bastila Jedi team, but it doesn't seem to be too much of a problem in this particular lineup. And the thing that you got to be really careful of, if there's C-3PO, no matter what the lineup is, you probably just don't want to bring Enfys Nest in at all, because the confusion really messes her up and prevents her from counterattacking Geonosians. Now, Geonosians are actually quite difficult for Nest to take out. Geonosians can't destroy. They can't kill off Enfys Nest. That's just something they can't do. They don't have the things in their kit. But Nest can have a hard time taking out Geonosians if she doesn't have the full entire lineup of Kira and Hermit Yoda, because of all the health regeneration and the protection rebalancing and the health rebalancing as well. Difficult to take out. But if you give Grandmaster's Training to Enfys Nest, you can keep getting big damage out there, and over time, with all the buffs the other team is getting and Nest slowly chipping away at the other team, she should be able to take out a Geonosian team. But you're going to be cutting short with time. It took about 4.5 to 4 minutes to always take out a Geonosian lineup, and if you can take out the Geonosian Brood Alpha first, the battle just becomes way easier, and it's going to go down a lot faster for you. And lastly, the graphics shows this, that you could take out Jedi Knight Revan, and I'm not going to say it's not possible. It's going to be very extreme. It's going to be a very difficult lineup, and if there is a Bast LeSean on the Jedi Knight Revan team, you probably just want to stay away. I don't know if it's going to be a big risk bringing Nest up against Jedi Knight Revan unless you're using a full entire team of 5 of some sort, because the problem is Jedi Knight Revan, they have stuns, they have ability blocks, and they also can reduce your max health over time if you have bonus protection, and Nest could resist a lot of it, but over a long battle, there's a good chance that Nest is going to get too weak, and through my testing, didn't really happen, but I have seen plenty of gameplay out there in the world that people have made Nest with this trio do work against Jedi Knight Revan, but again, very, very difficult, and I can't even really say if it has more of a 10% likelihood. The rest of these battles have like a 90, 95% plus likelihood of winning if you follow the directions I gave you. Against Jedi Knight Revan, probably not going to be nearly as high. I mean, maybe if you had some God tier mods, you can pull it off. Guys, take advantage of Nest. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know down below, how disgusted are you after watching this Enfys Nest video? Leave any questions, comments, subscribe, all that fun stuff, and I'll talk to you guys in the very next video. Peace out, everyone.
Party Richter, Party Richter. Down, 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 down. Party Richter, Party Richter. Son of a bitch. Party Richter, Party Richter. Down, down, down.